Priority number one in Washington is clearly economic stimulus. Here we have an industry that has the capacity to provide that economic stimulus, but we won't turn them loose. Let's talk a little bit about what that means to you and me as individuals. We use natural gas to heat our homes. In fact, in Virginia, a third of the homes are heated with natural gas. We use natural gas to manufacture plastics, to manufacture fertilizer. We use it to generate electricity that's used for all the obvious sources. We need those resources, and here's why. It's very simple. If we were to stop drilling in the United States for natural gas today, in 12 months, we would be producing 33% less natural gas. That's because natural gas wells have a natural decline as we deplete the reservoirs. Oil has a decline too, it's not quite that steep. Now, we have been successful in our industry in replacing that 33% decline every year, and in fact growing our natural gas resources. But to do that, we have to have places to drill. We have to have places to explore and to develop those new resources. If we don't do that, and you can see this coming crystal clear to us in the industry, as we don't have the money to drill because of the decline in prices, natural gas production is going to come down, and when this recession ends and factories go back to work and turn their plants on and require space heating for the plants, there's going to be a skyrocket in oil and gas prices. It is not a question of whether it'll happen, it's purely a question of soon. So in addition to denying access, what is our government doing? It is increasing taxes on our industry. Old habits in Washington are apparently clouding President Obama's promise for change. In his new budget, and this is a summary of the new budget, $80 billion are imposed on our industry in new taxes. $80 billion in new taxes. Now, that's a lot of money. Where is that going to come from? Let me just talk about Devon as an independent company. And by independent, I mean we only drill oil and gas wells. We don't have refineries or any of the downstream facilities. Our shareholders reward independence by trying to determine which company can develop the most oil and gas reserves at the least amount of cost. You're most efficient in developing those reserves. We have every incentive in the world to spend, which we do, 100% of our cash flow to drill natural gas wells and oil wells, which is what our industry does. Whatever the intellectual justification for the higher taxes is, any amount of money that is taken away from our industry is going to result in less drilling. We'll lay off people and have less drilling. It's the only way we can balance the budget. In fact, the proposals in President Obama's budget would take an estimated 25 to 33%, somewhere between a quarter and a third of our revenue would get diverted from drilling natural gas wells to paying government taxes. We have a clear choice in this country. You can choose this, which has the potential for more resources, more jobs, and more revenues for the state, or we can choose the Obama tax proposal, the proposal which is more taxes on our industry and higher cost to each and every one of you in this room. It's a simple choice. There are some politicians that will tell you, well, we don't need natural gas and oil. Environmental groups will argue that these are old forms of energy. And they attack coal and nuclear and oil and natural gas with a promise of alternate energy. I'm 100% in favor of alternate energy. But wind and solar and whatever else is out there is not very significant now and is not going to be very significant for decades to come. The reality is we need all forms of energy. We need to work on conservation. We need to work on all our historic forms of energy. And we need to do what we can to develop alternate sources until they become more practical and more economical. We're really at a critical point in this country where we, on the promise that alternate energy is around the corner, we are attacking and restricting our existing historical supplies long before there is an alternative source that is really out there. And we've been subjected to a pattern of delay that is quite disturbing. If you look at what Secretary Salazar has done so far, the specific actions with regard to our industry, he's canceled 77 leases that had already been issued in Utah. He has delayed oil shale research leases, just doing the research in Utah. And finally, he has postponed for at least 6 months the 5-year leasing plan that the Bush administration had opposed for looking at offshore, despite the fact that they had already received 150,000 comments on offshore, mostly in support of that. Now you might say, well, why not study it for 6 months? We've had the ban in place for 27 years. 27 years we've been studying it and we haven't gotten anywhere. Another 6 months, do we really going to learn any more by another 6 months? It's hard to imagine what we can learn that we don't know now. We know what the risks are, we know what the rewards are. 2 decades from now, oil and natural gas will continue to lead the way. When you think about it, all of our transportation is run by oil. Solar and wind generate electricity. You might have some electric cars if they're small enough, but there's no battery in the world today that can drive a plane, that can run a truck. An 18-wheeler run off a battery is, if you're a technical person, you laugh at that. Those resources require oil. They're going to be around for a long time. In fact, demand in the world is projected to increase by 2030, according to the U.S. Department of Energy, by 50%. That's a huge increase. Fortunately, our country has the 12th largest oil reserves in the country. And we have growing technology that allows us to discover that. Let me give you a little example of what we've done offshore. If you were with a group of geologists or geophysicists in the year 2000, 9 years ago, and you were contemplating an area called the Lower Tertiary, which is in the deep waters of the Gulf of Mexico, 175 miles offshore. If you were a geologist, you would have said, I don't think that those formations were out there. I think that whatever sand was formed there was washed away by ancient oceans. And if it was there, it probably is not there in paying quantities. Furthermore, we do not have drilling rigs that can sit in 10,000 feet of water, sit in 2 miles of water, and drill a well that's 30,000 feet deep. We don't have that technology. Today we do. You would also say we don't have seismic. That part of the world is covered by large salt formations on the surface of the ocean that historic seismic waves were just absorbed in. Nothing came out, so you couldn't see anything that was below the size, below those salt bodies. We now have that technology. And Devon and other companies started with that new technology that literally did not exist just 9 years ago in discovering large fields. Devon has participated in 4 of those discoveries. The current estimates are that there are 15 billion barrels of oil not in our 4 discoveries, but in the discoveries that Devon and other industries have had. That's a new resource that historic survey studies would have said doesn't exist. Indeed, a lot of people in the oil and gas industry did not think it existed until we went out there and drilled the wells. And we did that with very minimal environmental damage. In fact, the hurricanes that have roared through Katrina and Rita and Ike, that have roared through the oil and gas offshore patch, have done no offshore damage at all. The industry has an incredible record with the new technology that we have to being able to drill those wells, shut those wells down at the wellhead, and ensure that even when the worst hurricanes that we've had in generations go right through the middle of the patch, that technology is able to have us withstand that without any environmental damage at all. In fact, I encourage you to look at the American Petroleum Institute's technology tour. That some of those exhibits out there are really quite interesting, and it shows what this industry can do if given the chance. As you know, for the last several years, Forbes magazine has ranked Virginia as one of the top states in the United States for business. Coal mining, technology, shipbuilding, you have a lot of things going for you. But one thing you do need is you need energy. To do any of the things that you want to do, you need energy to get the job done. And it's the same story throughout this country, in every town, in every city, no matter how big or how small, you need energy to get it done. We've waited 27 years to be able to develop the resources that we have offshore. Now is surely the time to do it so that we can get those resources available for our own people, so that you can get the jobs here in Virginia, you can get the revenue flowing into the state coffers we've waited a long time to seriously address our energy issues in a responsible manner and not be driven so much just by partisan politics. So I enlist your help in that cause. It's important for you and your children. Thank you very much.